Before Tia Moretti ever wore a corporate badge, she wore dust on her boots and purpose in her blood. For 15 years, Thea lived in places the world tried to forget, border towns with no borders, disaster zones where time froze refugee camps filled with the echoes of people who had lost everything but the will to survive. She wasn't sent there because she was fearless. She was sent because she made chaos listen. Her job built order out of nothing. She could set up a fully functioning medical supply line in 72 hours using only a satellite phone, a half-broken generator, and her contacts in 3 languages. She once negotiated the safe release of an aid convoy trapped between 2 rival militias while running a fever and translating in real time. Leadership wasn't a title for her. It was a daily act of endurance. She didn't lead with buzzwords. She led with blistered hands. She didn't manage from behind the desk. She managed from inside tents soaked with rain and despair. She knew how to read a room even when the room was a field full of mothers with starving children. She knew how to listen even when what she heard was grief too deep for words. When she finally left the humanitarian sector and stepped into the corporate world, people smiled politely at her resume, but they didn't understand it. She wasn't polished. She didn't know the jargon, but she knew people. She knew pressure. She knew how to lead in the middle of failure. That's why Grayscale Corp eventually hired her to lead engineering team BA team, no, not for flashy slideshows, but for delivering the impossible, quietly, consistently, without fanfare. For 8 years, Tia led that team with grace and grit. Her background in chaos made her calm under pressure. Her experience with scarcity made her a master of efficiency. Her belief in people made her magnetic. But in the corporate world, danger doesn't always show up with warning signs. One day, Thea came back from a regional strategy meeting confident that her team was finally getting the recognition they had earned. What greeted her wasn't applause. It wasn't even indifference. It was silence. The kind of silence that tells you without a word that something has already been taken from you. And for the first time in decades, Thea Moretti felt the sting of betrayal, not from governments or armed rebels, but from her own company. And she understood one thing clearly: the battlefield had changed, but the war had just begun. Monday, 8:03 a.m. Thea Moretti stepped out of the elevator, still riding the high of her successful regional presentation. Her team had crushed every deadline. Budgets were secured. The CEO had personally thanked her for the projected growth numbers. And most importantly, she had fought for and won a larger training budget for her engineers. She had planned to bring coffee for the team this morning, maybe even proposed a celebratory lunch. But as the elevator doors opened, the air hit her differently. It wasn't just quiet. It was hollow. The East Wing, usually buzzing with keyboard clacks, whiteboard scribbles, and low laughter, now sat like an abandoned theater after closing night. Empty chairs, cleared desks. Gone were the coffee mugs, the stress balls, the mini whiteboard Finola always updated with a sarcastic quote of the day. Even the potted plants were missing. What remained was dust, literal dust. Rectangular outlines on tabletops where monitors used to be. Finola Tia called out just in case, no answer. She scanned the room again. This was their space, the one they earned after saving 3 major product launches. The one with the perfect view between the testing lab and design floor, and it was gutted. A hallway door creaked. She turned and spotted Loxley from accounting, holding a travel mug and looking awkward. "Hey," Tia said, trying to stay calm. "Where's my team?" Loxley blinked. His face shifted from confusion to a sympathy he didn't quite know how to deliver. They moved them yesterday. What moved them where he hesitated? Then said quietly, "Check the basement." The basement Grayscale didn't even have proper office space in the basement. As Thea walked toward the service elevator, her heart sank with every step. The ride down felt like falling, and the silence, it no longer felt hollow. It felt like the beginning of a betrayal. The elevator doors opened, and it felt like stepping into another world. The air was heavy, damp. Pipes ran along the ceilings like tangled veins. Flickering lights buzzed above cracked cement floors. A faint drip, drip, drip echoed in the distance. It wasn't an office. It was a graveyard for forgotten people. Thea pushed past crates and storage units until she saw it. A paper sign crookedly taped to a dented door. Engineering Team B, she opened the door. 7 engineers, her team, were huddled between exposed wiring and rusted shelving. Their monitors rested on flimsy folding tables. Extension cords snaked across the floor like hazards, waiting to happen. A single bucket caught the water leaking from a ceiling pipe right above Finola's head. What the hell happened? Thea asked. But their eyes said it all. They'd been humiliated. Finola, ever the bold one, finally looked up. Her voice was steady, but her pride was bleeding. While you were at the conference, Deer showed up with movers, said we needed to relocate immediately to make space for a new specialist, gave us 30 minutes to pack up everything, Specialist Thea asked. Ren, the youngest developer, mumbled without lifting her head. Yeah, Deer says he's going to revolutionize the entire department. Thea felt the rage rise, but she didn't let it show. She climbed back up the elevator, back to the space that used to be hers. When the doors opened on the east wing, her wing, it was no longer empty. One man stood at her old desk, polished, young. He was arranging framed certificates along the wall. And standing beside him, beaming like a proud father, was Deer, the department head. Thea Deer exclaimed as if nothing had happened. Come meet Bastian, our new productivity transformation specialist. His methodology increased output 300% at his last 3 companies. Bastian didn't even look up. Thea looked at her old desk, the one her team earned. And now a man who had never written a single line of code in this company was sitting in her chair, in her place, in their place. And that's when the silence inside her broke. She didn't yell, she didn't argue, she just smiled cold and knowing. Because if Deer and Bastian thought she would accept this quietly, they had underestimated the wrong woman. Bastian came into the company like a TED Talk come to life. Perfect hair, a voice that sounded like it had been trained in a media lab, and a wardrobe that screamed startup founder meets luxury consultant. On paper, he was dazzling. On the wall, even more so, he came with framed degrees from schools Tia's team couldn't afford to dream about. Everywhere he went, he dropped a single phrase like confetti, 300% productivity increase. Not 50%, not 75%, 300%. He said it with a straight face, as if tripling efficiency overnight was just another Monday for him. He spoke in slides. Every word designed to look good on a bullet point. Synergy leverage, disruptive scalability. The executives ate it up. Deer especially followed Bastian around like a puppy chasing Wi-Fi. But what Bastian had in polish, he lacked in depth. He couldn't explain how the existing infrastructure worked. He had never seen Grayscale's source code. He once called Finola's multi-threaded algorithm interesting spaghetti. He wasn't technical. He was theatrical. A man whose greatest skill was talking about work he never had to do, to people who didn't know the difference. And worst of all, he thought his charm was a replacement for respect. But Tia Moretti didn't care about charm. She cared about results. And Bastian was about to learn that in Tia's world, buzzwords don't build systems. People do. Tia found Deer in the hallway outside the executive offices. He was laughing at something Bastian had said. A polished, over-practiced kind of laugh. The kind executives give when they think they're witnessing genius. Bastian was gesturing toward a chart on his tablet, tossing around phrases like vertical integration and zero-sum redundancy. It was a verbal glitter. And Deer was bedazzled. Tia stood there for a moment, watching them, not saying a word. Finally, Deer noticed her. Tia, he beamed. Wasn't Bastian's vision impressive? He's going to streamline everything. Total alignment across departments. No more siloed teams. Tia nodded slowly. Right. And where exactly will my team fit into this streamlined future? Deer hesitated, his smile faltering just for a split second. Temporarily, things might feel a bit displaced. But once Bastian fully implements his system, well, all benefit. It's about the long game. The long game. Thea had played the long game for years, but she was playing it with code, with people, with results, not with buzzwords and branding. Deer looked at her like a college student who just discovered TED Talks and thought he invented thought leadership. In that moment, Thea realized something deeply unsettling. She wasn't losing because she lacked value. She was losing because she didn't lie beautifully enough. Bastian didn't just sell ideas. He sold illusions, wrapped in confidence. And Deer wasn't looking for truth. He was looking for the next big pitch deck. Thea didn't argue, didn't push back. She smiled and walked away. Oh, because now she knew the real stakes. This wasn't a competition of talent. It was a war of perception. They didn't make an announcement. They didn't even send an email. 7 of the company's most loyal, consistent, high-performing engineers have been quietly relocated like clutter. No farewell, no context, no thanks, just a silent demotion. Engineering Team B had once saved a failing launch by coding for 72 hours straight during a blackout. They had patched a global security flaw in under 36 hours when every other team had failed to diagnose the issue. They weren't flashy, but when things fell apart, people called them. Now, they were treated like an afterthought. Bastion became the future. They became a footnote. And worse, no one questioned it. No one stood up for them. In board meetings, their names weren't mentioned. In hallway conversations, their seats were already forgotten. Deer had erased them. And Bastion never once came downstairs, not even to introduce himself. Thea saw the exhaustion creeping into their eyes, not from work, but from being invisible. Vega, who had mentored half the department, now fixed cables next to a leaking pipe. Ren, the prodigy, kept her headphones on all day because that way no one saw the tears. Dax stopped speaking altogether. Finola started swearing more than usual. Thea could march upstairs. She could have demanded answers, but she didn't because she understood something. The others didn't yet. You don't fight a storm with fists. You fight it with patience and planning. So she waited. She watched. And she began laying the groundwork. Conversations were started with old contacts. Documentation was duplicated. Systems were quietly prepared for transition. This wasn't an ending. It was an opening move. Tia never gave them a speech, no rallying cry, no we fight back moment, just instructions. Simple, quiet. Direct, back up your work, archive every version, label it cleanly, make sure no step is undocumented. Write transition guides. Assume you're handing it to someone who knows nothing. Keep logs of everything, every pull request, every commit, every change. She didn't say why. No one asked. Because something about her voice, the way she carried herself made it clear. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. At first, her team looked confused, but they followed. Because Thea had never asked for blind trust. And now that she did, they gave it to her without hesitation. Finola stopped grumbling and started writing documentation. Ren organized folders like her life depended on it. Dax began structuring every system as if it was being handed off to the Pentagon. No one spoke much. No one needed to. They weren't just preparing files. They were preparing for departure, even if they didn't know it yet. In the corner, Thea built a spreadsheet, not of tasks, but of people, contacts, former colleagues, trusted names across the industry. One name sat in bold at the top, Talia Chen. She hadn't called Talia in years, but something in her gut told her she'd answer. It came in the form of a single message, short, direct, unexpected. Thea's CEO requests you to present Engineering Team B's accomplishments at the quarterly board meeting. For a moment, just a moment, something sparked inside her. After weeks in the shadows, after being shoved into a basement with mold and shame the company had noticed, someone remembered. She printed the reports, revised the slides, polished the metrics, and for the first time in weeks, her team sat a little taller. "You're going to speak for us?" Finola asked, hopeful. "No," Thea replied. "I'm going to remind them who we are." On the morning of the meeting, she wore her cleanest blazer, pulled her hair back, rehearsed her transitions. They didn't have the best lighting in the basement, but her slides shone like data-driven armor. As she climbed the stairs toward the top floor, every step felt like an ascent from the forgotten. But just 2 floors from victory, he appeared. Deer, blocking the stairwell, smiling that too wide smile. "Tia, slight change of plans," he said, fake casual. "The board's more interested in future innovation than past metrics. Bastian will be presenting instead." But the CEO personally requested. "I spoke with her this morning. She agrees. Bastian's approach aligns better with our current vision." The hallway felt like smaller. Her hands full of data suddenly weighed nothing, just paper. Tia didn't scream, didn't push past him. She nodded once and turned around. Her team looked up when she came back. She said nothing. But her silence was loud enough. Tia didn't scream. She didn't slam a door. She didn't call anyone incompetent. She just went back to her desk. The same cracked desk in the basement. Water dripping behind her. Wires overhead. But now her fingers moved with precision. First a secure zip file. Second a quick message. Third click. Sent to Talia Grant, former colleague. Now Chief Technology Officer at Polaris Systems. A rising rival company with fresh funding and something even more valuable. Respect for builders. Tia didn't need to explain much. Just one sentence in the email. "If you're still building the new R&D division, I have the team." Within minutes, the reply came. "Tia, yes, we've been looking for leadership like yours." While Deere was busy celebrating his innovation culture, Tia was quietly stitching together an escape route. One document at a time. One resume at a time. One loyalty at a time. She didn't threaten to leave. She just began building something worth leaving for. The lights dimmed. Bastian adjusted his perfect tie. His PowerPoint lit up the boardroom like a tech commercial, animated transition, 3D graphs, inspirational quotes from Forbes. At the core of our productivity transformation, he said confidently, is synergy-driven optimization pipelines. Buzzwords flew: engagement, agile, seamlessness. Some board members nodded, others blinked. Then came the question. A woman at the far end of the table, "Can you walk us through the rollback protocol your team used when the server load peaked last quarter? Bastian froze. Well, our cross-functional initiative ensured alignment with the protocol." She asked again, this time slower. The room shifted. Bastian looked at the CDO, then at Deere. No lifeline. "I'd have to check with the engineering team," he stammered. Silence. Behind the scenes, Tia watched it all unfold. Calm, quiet, ready. Tia Moretti didn't raise her voice. She raised her hand. From a sleek black folder, she pulled out printed documents, bound indexed, time-stamped, and then she passed them out. One to each board member, one to Deere. One slid across the table to Bastian. "What is this?" the CFO asked. "Facts," Tia said. Calm, precise, deadly. Pages turned. Eyes widened. A lawsuit from a former employer in Zurich. Bankruptcy filings tied to Bastian's failed startup in 2019. A quiet termination from a tech firm in Singapore after a major security breach. Bastian's face turned paper white. "This is a hit job," he muttered. Tia didn't blink. "This is your sum, the one you didn't submit." A beat. Then the legal counsel cleared his throat. "If even one of these is real, we're liable?" The room was silent. Deere looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Bastian sat frozen, his hands clenched under the table. Tia Moretti stood up, calm, composed, but her eyes burned. "This isn't a tantrum," she said. "It's an exit strategy." She opened her laptop, clicked. A contract appeared on the screen signed by all 7 engineers. "We've accepted an offer from Talia. Double the salary, full creative control. And most importantly, respect." Deere's voice cracked. "Tia, wait, please. Let's talk about this. We can fix it." But it was too late. Tia closed the laptop, picked up her folder, turned to the board. "You didn't lose a team today." A pause. "You threw one away." 2 days after Tia walked out, the call came. Not from Deere, but from the CEO himself. "Ms. Moretti," he said, "let me be blunt. We made a mistake." Tia didn't say a word. She let the silence speak for her. We want to offer you something new, the CEO continued, a department of your own. Handpicked staff, full autonomy, and you'll report directly to me. Didier raised an eyebrow. Why now? Because we finally realized something he said. You weren't just running a team. You were running the only system that actually worked. Thea looked out the window. Her reflection stared back, a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. This wasn't a rescue, it was recognition, and for the first time the game was on her terms. Most people would choose, stay or go. But Thea Moretti, she didn't play by old rules anymore. She called a meeting, just the 7 of them, the ones who had built something out of nothing. I've made a decision, she said. 4 of you will stay here. 3 will go with Talia. The room tensed, not out of fear, but respect. We're not breaking up, she added. We're branching out. And then she unveiled the plan. She would act as strategic advisor for both teams, 2 companies, one invisible thread. Thea at the center. Together they would become a quiet revolution, a cross-company collaboration model. No one in the industry had ever dared to try. Not competition, convergence. One of the engineers finally asked the question everyone had been holding back. Why split us up, Thea? Why not keep us all together? Thea leaned forward, eyes calm, calculating. Because when you keep power in one room, she said they only need one key to lock us out. She stood pointed at the whiteboard where 2 org charts have been quietly drawn. But when we're in 2 places they can touch us, no one can cut off the system when the system has no single point of failure. Silence fell. The truth wasn't comforting, it was undeniable. We're not just building a team, Thea said. We're building a silent power network, and no one's going to see it coming. The boardroom was silent. A polished table, 12 chairs, 1 ticking clock. Deer stood up confidently, same posture, same empty charisma. Today I present our transformation strategy, he began. Slides clicked, buzzwords flowed, synergy, scalable, human capital, optimization. But this time, Thea was there, and she wasn't in the back row. She sat front and center, calm, collected, and deadly quiet. The same woman he had dismissed now carried folders. And those folders, they weren't reports. They were receipts. Deer talked, and the board members shifted. He was losing them. Then, a director finally asked Mr. Deer, what exactly qualifies Bastian to lead a tech team? The room paused. Deer smiled, but glanced nervously toward Bastian. Bastian adjusted his cufflinks. I coordinate outcomes. He doesn't even know how Git works. Thea finally spoke, calm, flat, inevitable. The board turned to her. The real meeting had just begun. Thea stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You asked who Bastian is, she began. Let me show you what Bastian did. She passed the folders down the table. Not glossy slides, just cold printed data. Page 1, budget request inflated by 63%. Page 2, project timelines all delayed under Bastian's lead. Page 3, output dropped 42% since the restructuring. The room was silent. Then she opened the last folder. This, she said, is what my team did. On-time delivery rates, cost under budget, 0 code errors in deployment for 9 consecutive quarters. She didn't brag. She just stood there letting the numbers speak. We weren't the problem, she finished. We were the reason this company functioned. And you buried us in a basement. Someone exhaled sharply. A pen clicked nervously. Deer didn't move. Bastian blinked too much. And the board. They finally saw the truth printed in ink. Silence. Then the CEO leaned forward. His voice low sharp. Mr. Deer. Mr. Bastian, you're dismissed. Effective immediately. Deer opened his mouth. Closed it. Bastian turned pale. Security entered quiet. Efficient. No words needed. Thea stood still. Not smiling. Not triumphant. Just calm. The CEO turned to her. Ms. Moretti, I believe we owe you an apology and an opportunity. A pause. The whole board watching. We'd like you to lead the new technical division as director. A beat. Tia looked down at her hands, then back up. I didn't steal dear C, she said, her voice even. He cleared it for me the moment he shoved me into the basement. The room didn't applaud. They didn't need to. The silence was louder than clapping. 6 months later, the headlines told their own story. Cross-company innovation shocks industry standards. Two rivals. One vision, Tia Moretti's new era. The two companies, once competitors, were now partners. Engineers shared frameworks. Designers co-built features. Productivity up 143%, turnover down to nearly zero. They called it the silent network. A system without ego, without gatekeepers. Thea walked through the new innovation hub built between both HQs. Two logos on the wall, one shared mission. She didn't need a big office, just a long table, a strong team, and enough space for the next generation to lead. For the first time in years, she felt peace, because real power doesn't shout, it builds. And what about Bastian and Dear Bastian now hosts workshops on corporate culture and innovation to empty rooms? He calls himself a consultant, but there's no company willing to take his call. His LinkedIn profile is full of motivational quotes, but his inbox stays silent. As for Dear, he works at a small firm in the suburbs. No corner office, no power, no applause, just paperwork. Once he tried to apply for a role at Thea's new division. HR never called back. In the end, they weren't taken down by revenge, but by something quieter, irrelevance. People kept asking me, was it revenge, Thea? Did it feel good to win like that? I always gave the same answer. No, we didn't win because we humiliated them. We won because we made it impossible for them to humiliate anyone else ever again. We didn't destroy their legacy. We rewrote what legacy could mean. In a world obsessed with flashy titles, we chose quiet excellence. In a culture that rewards manipulation, we chose truth. And in a system that tried to bury us, we grew roots. That was never revenge. That was reform. Sometimes the quietest people carry the strongest power. Tia Moretti didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She watched. She listened. And when the moment came, she moved with precision. In a world where power often rewards noise, this story reminds us real power is built in silence. It grows in integrity, and it wins without needing to destroy. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, don't waste energy proving yourself to people who don't listen. Build, prepare. And when the time comes, let your work speak louder than their words. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself in Thea or her team, then hit subscribe, because we tell stories that the world often ignores. Stories about quiet courage, silent power, and unexpected victories. Subscribe now. Let's build a world where integrity wins.